What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
Good afternoon and welcome. I am not Mike Rivero. My name is Steve Elkins. I got a show on the network, and it's called Off the Beaten Path. I am sitting in for Michael Rivero for the next 2 weeks. We're kind of doing a tag team thing here on the network here, covering Mike. And I've got my good friends Dave and Keith Rogers going to sit in with me today. I am the host in the chair today. Tomorrow will be Keith Rogers. Today's date is June 3rd, 2020. And please go to our website. Plenty of great articles I've had posted up there, and others have sent over, republicbroadcasting.org. We will be taking calls in our second hour. I want to cover some ground rules I've discussed with Keith Rogers and Dave alike, and we are all in agreement here. What happened yesterday is not going to happen today. I and we all agree we will not stand or tolerate any racist comments, any generalizations, any racist generalizations on this network. We are a positive platform. We are the independent media. We are better than the others. We are accountable for what we say. There are some ground rules in the second hour. You can call in. Please keep it down to a certain level here, a number of minutes here. I'd say 2 to 3 minutes maximum here. We want to make sure we get everybody who calls in to either ask a question or give an opinion or a comment. This is your network, and we're here for you. But we need to also remember the time limitations and make sure that everybody gets a chance at the conversation here. So please get your bullet points all in a row and stay on topic. We're going to ask you to stay on topic. Now, if anybody calls in with an agenda and they're going to go off on this racist rant again, you will be quickly cut off. Okay. And you'll be flirting around with disaster here because you're going to get yourself on a ban list. I don't think that's what you want, but I'm happy to do it. I don't mind. I've done it plenty of times before. So we are going to stay on the path, and we're going to talk about the issues, discuss some things, and I've got some great topics to talk about. So I know Dave does, and Keith's got a couple of videos we're going to listen to tonight, the audios of those. And so first I want to say that I've got, after yesterday's show, I know we're on YouTube. This is also being rebroadcast. I think, is it live? Dave, is it live on YouTube or not?
Yeah, we are live on YouTube as well.
Okay, we're live.
It's going out.
We're live on YouTube. So I did go back and look at the recording there. It sounded really nice. Thank you for doing such a great job on that, Dave. But I received a lot of very nasty emails yesterday after the broadcast. People calling us liberals, using a lot of profane language, really, really disrespectful. And I didn't appreciate it. So, like I said, if those people are listening, they have an agenda. Our agenda is truth. You don't like it? That's too bad. Go find another network. Go listen to somebody else. Don't waste our time. I'm not going to waste my time. We're not going to waste our time with you. So I just wanted to share one of them. I deleted all of them, and they just got so bad and so nasty, which I kind of figured out really fast, Dave and Keith, that these are either people in the country, uneducated, or they're coming from another place far outside the country, because the English is atrocious. Their spelling is really bad, so which always tips me off to another country. Their English was very poor. Their grammar's poor. So, but I'm not going to go over those. I deleted those. He got nasty, rude, disrespectful. I have no problem with people writing me an email to say maybe where I got it wrong, or maybe look at it this way. How about this different angle? And we keep the dialogue going on, the discussion on what's going on. And that's great. We all learn. Maybe I learn something. Maybe I educate somebody. And that's the way it's supposed to be. That's what this network's all about. That's what I like about it. But this person was definitely had an agenda, and was all racist and hate. And I think the only I did respond back is what a life that must be, to go through life and hate so much. You know how much energy it takes to hate? It takes a lot of energy to hate. Not much to love, but I mean, to hate, it takes a lot of energy. It's destructive to the immune system. But I did respond to one of them here who sent me another one. This is a totally different off the subject guy, basically kind of saying the same thing, trying to find reason why we're allowed to push back and beat on others And I responded to him. He sent me a video saying white people being beaten up by peaceful demonstrators. Of course, they were black. And I responded with blacks beating whites, whites beating blacks, Asians are hated, Russians are hated, Mexicans are hated, the LGBTQ are hated, a world consumed with hate. Why is that? All I can say is don't be a statistic yourself. You have a Second Amendment right, the Castle Law, live by it. I'm not a liberal, and I certainly don't condone any of these hate violence acts going on right now. I don't impose my will on others, and I don't accept others imposing their will upon me. The bottom line is respect. There is so little of that these days. Life is not valued. The haters hate themselves. So much negative energy is being used to hate. It is self-defeating. Prolonged hatred will destroy your immune system, and then you will get to see me looking down on you in the ICU. Smile a while, Steve. I just had to throw that in there because that's how I live my life. Yeah, the glass is half empty. Is it half full? I'm the positive guy. I'm going to say it's half full, and we're gonna see what we can do to make it all the way full. So, Dave and Keith, thanks for joining me on this ride today. We're going to have a good time.
Yeah, you're very welcome there, Steve.
Anything you wanted to add with that, Dave?
Yeah, we are live on YouTube, and we're not sending a video stream out aside from just the normal cart, but you can listen to us live on YouTube if you want. You can also go to republicbroadcasting.org for all the streams there as well. At some point, we will be playing some clips, not today, that the video may come through there, so you may get a little additional content by going to YouTube. And Mike will be back here in the next couple of weeks, and you get to see his face on there. I tried to put my face on there, and I crashed all the computers because I definitely have a face for radio, that is for sure, and I don't need to visually assault you guys. Now, I do have a couple comments I want to make about this whole racism thing. Sure. This is being fanned up to divide us, so we fight amongst each other. Well, our common enemies are having their way with us, and by getting in here and spewing all this hateful racist stuff, you're just perpetuating this agenda. You're playing right into their hand, and this is not good. Hey, the truth is, we're not all equal. We're all different, every single one of us, but we all have equal protection under the law. And there shouldn't be any preference to black, white, peach, taupe, mauve, or plaid. Well, maybe the plaid people, we'll talk about them later. But there shouldn't be anything in there because we need to be able to get past all these things that divide us, because we are not a united nation anymore. We are divided. We are more divided than we've ever been. And the evidence of that is all these agendas out there, the Soros and their ilk, spending all this money, getting us to fight amongst ourselves, to be violent amongst ourselves, to loot amongst ourselves, when we should be binding together and trying to come up with some solutions to put these agendas to bed once and for all. And that's all I got to say about that. Please, please don't fall for this stuff anymore.
Yeah. Keith, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I do. I know the media is trying to fan this up, and we received email together earlier, but the media has been really playing this thing about white police officers involved in that thing, and it turns out that they're not all white.
No.
But this is the agenda, is to fan this up, and of course we saw this right before the Iraq War too, to where we had all these expletives of what the Iraqis and the Afghanis and God knows all the slangs that went with them. And I saw it as a kid when the Vietnam War was going, all these weird names they came up for the Asians, and and that's how they get people to hate. And I remember I used to set my daughters down watching South Pacific, and I still hear that song going through my mind about you've got to be taught to learn to hate before you're 6 or 7 or 8, and that's what people are subject to, and it works for a lot of people. Especially under this American exceptionalism that we have. When you listen to Vice President Pence over at West Point talking about the coming conflagrations, and he specifically names the Asian Pacific, Russia, and down in the Venezuelan area. I mean, this is like watching Red Dawn, and how great it was to have a bunch of good old American boys whoop some commies, some Nicaraguans, and some Cubans on a football field, So anyway, I'm tired of the racism. I live on a reservation here, and I have no problem with the tribal members up here. And my daughter's got a granddaughter. Well, I got a granddaughter here who's got part tribal in her, and I just don't see the racism. I didn't grow up with it. We all played together and everything like that. And if anyone wants to ever do some research, look up the Christmas truce of World War I, and then follow the diaries too of the Russians and the Italians and stuff, and realize where all of those young Christians who took that time off from fighting to recognize their Savior's birth, where they ate together, they drank together, they played soccer together, and they shared letters from home together, and then they realized, hey, we're all just boys. And then, of course, it's back to killing for the state. So I'm tired of it.
Well, I agree. You and I talked today, and, we grew up, I had plenty of Black friends that went to the same high school with us. And there was never any problem. We played sports together. We were in the same classes together. It's really odd. It's really strange because I didn't see any racism then. And for some reason it's being fanned up now. The flames of that are being fanned up now. And I just don't believe it actually is what they say it is. I just don't believe there are people out there that just hate this much. There are a small group, but I don't think you can generalize this to a population is really this divided. I think this is what they're fanning the flames of this, trying to kick this thing off. There's many objectives with what's going on now, just as there were many objectives with COVID-19. I'll talk about that in a second. But I've noticed around the country now, everybody seems to be falling. All these states are falling for it. Cities are falling for the curfew now. Now, Orlando is starting their curfew tonight. It's a 2-mile radius around Orlando, which is not too far from me, starting at 8 o'clock and going to 5 in the morning. And certain other areas will be 10 o'clock p.m. till 5 in the morning. And it seems to be catching on. Everybody is doing this curfew thing around the country. So they drove us inside with the COVID-19, the booga booga. Put your mask on if you go out, gloves and mask and all that stuff, but stay inside. Don't go to work. Let's just tank the economy. Let's destroy the economy. And then somewhere along the way, we'll decide to let you go back out. Go back to your jobs. But wait a minute here. Can't do that now. We've decided you're not ready to go out yet. It's not time. A new crisis comes along, and that's the racial beating here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So for some reason, the Democrats, I agree. We all agree that Antifa has a hand in all of this. And they're a small group, but they are bringing in people in. Their people are being bussed in all over the country. Supplies are being given, bricks are being given, stones, you name it. There are people with backpacks walking around, and that just doesn't happen. Somebody is funding this, and we've pointed fingers at George Soros. He's done a lot of underhanded things because he can't stand Donald Trump. So we know he's behind dethroning Donald Trump. So we can always assume, with a strong assume, that Soros is also behind this and also funding Antifa, no doubt about it. Well, have you noticed that the Democrats, on the Democrat side, Schumer, Pelosi, none of the Democrats have stepped forward. Biden has not stepped forward to condemn the actions of these violent protesters. Now, I guess for some reason they believe protesting, which is your First Amendment right, it is a verbal protest, a peaceful protest is your First Amendment right. But that does not include destruction and looting and hurting others. That's not covered in your First Amendment rights. So, but I have yet to hear Schumer, Pelosi, or anybody else, Biden, come out and condemn the actions of these people. So I've kind of thought this thing through. I've watched a lot of videos in the last 12 hours, and I've come to conclusion that this is the newest diversion to, yes, divide us, but it's got an agenda behind it. It is to take Donald Trump down before the 2020 elections, no doubt about it. Now, they've tried everything in the world to take Donald Trump down. And I'm not a Donald Trump fan. I call it fair and square. I call it as I see it. If he does a great job, I'll say kudos. If he doesn't, he's going to get my finger waved at him. But they've tried the sex scandals. They've tried Russiagate, collusion, voters cheating on the voting, his taxes. They've gone after this pandemic, using this pandemic. They've done an impeachment, obstruction of justice. They've thrown everything at this guy and nothing has stuck. Nothing is sticking. So they must try again, and keep your eyes open because this isn't over by far. We still got plenty of time before the elections for another one or two scandals.
Yeah.
But if we continue on this pathway, yeah, go ahead, Keith.
I was just going to interject some on that. I was listening a little bit to that Rosenstein thing with Lindsey Graham, a bunch of Zionists talking with a bunch of, and they were, again, harping on this thing about a definite link between Trump and Russia and blah, 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 and the Ukraine, blah, 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 and that Trump said a little interference from outside is okay, blah, 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 And then I kept thinking, well, geez, we have the article from the LA Times where the United States has interfered in the elections of over 81 countries. That's okay. Yeah. It's okay too also if anyone's watched the video, the lobby, that Israel can get involved in over here and make loyalty oaths and stuff, that's okay. So to me, it's just a runaround, and it seems like there's always one group over in D.C. that just has this, as we used to call in our youth, a hard-on towards Russia. And I guess it's the old Bolsheviks from the old, from the old Soviet bloc there that just can't get over Russia there. And then in the time I was watching that, I didn't hear him bring up anything about Hillary Clinton and Uranium One or any of that stuff. So
You're not.
It's so selective.
You're not going to, right, Dave?
There's a possibility that all of this has been contrived just to divide people farther. That maybe there was never really any jeopardy for Trump getting impeached. It was a circus to distract us. We need to pay attention. Impeachment. Because as soon as all that went away and this pandemic happened, there hasn't been one further word about this impeachment. It's like it never even happened. It kind of makes you wonder.
No, I agree. COVID-19 was definitely a pandemic. We've stated that over and over. We've shown the proof that there were trial runs on the COVID-19 virus being released, and there's plenty of evidence out there to show that this thing has an agenda. It was an economic reset for Wall Street and many other agendas. So I see this rioting right now. What's going on with the George Floyd and the Officer Chauvin? That scenario there to be another political agenda, like I said, to take down Donald Trump. Now, everything that Donald Trump does on the Democrat side is always a negative. It's always bad. He's the worst man. They are working very hard to make the obstacles that if Donald Trump actually pushes back and does use some kind of military force or calls on National Guard to push back the protesters, the looters, the rioters, that's being a dictator. And that's a bad thing. You don't want a dictator. Of course, bringing him down to at the level of a dictator, and then while pushing Joe Biden up there to say, here's the man who's going to bring harmony. He's going to bring back the people together and loving one another. And actually, Biden actually said that yesterday in a speech through his little mask, saying he wants to bring harmony back to everybody and bring us all together again. But I finally realized that with everything they've thrown at Donald Trump to bring him down, to make sure he doesn't get a second term, that they can't win. The Democrats cannot win an election by honest, fair means. They don't have the platform. They don't have the agenda. They can't do anything, seem to be anything right, other than drive up the bills, increase the cost of living and everything, inflation, and, socialism, pushing socialism. But they can't win really on any agenda. So they must win by any means possible. And so they're going to do the mudslinging. They're going to find anything they can. They're going to manufacture whatever they can. And there's more coming. There's definitely more coming.
By crook, I tell you. Now, the charges have been upgraded to second-degree murder, and all of the cops involved are now charged. So you would hope that now that justice is going to be served, that all that stuff's going to quiet down. And if you think Joe Biden's going to bring unity, I've got a beachfront resort on the Sun for sale.
Speaking of that, I'll answer. I was watching Dave Hodges earlier. They were talking about Antifa being bussed into Wyoming and over here to Idaho. So, and of course, all the what they called rednecks are going to be out there with their guns and stuff. Plus, we have that cop down in California that the LA police former, I assume it was former. I hope she's not current, but where she says shoot protesters.
Keith, hold that thought. We'll come right back after this short commercial break. This is What Really Happened. And welcome back. This is What Really Happened. And I'm Steve Elkins sitting in for Mike Rivero today and being joined by my good friend Keith Rogers and Dave. And before I go back to Keith here and finish up his thought, he's got a clip here we're gonna listen to from Democracy Now! But they spoke to the brother of George Floyd yesterday, Terrence Floyd, and he was very upset, saying what's happening now is he agreed it's not about my brother dying at all. This is very much political, and you're destroying your own neighborhoods and you're burning down black businesses. So this is very political. You're dishonoring my brother's name. Yes, we should all look into police brutality on all races, not just black, but there's some bad police officers out there. And yeah, we need to do some house clean, no doubt about it. On a state side here, this actually should have been done probably on the local level in Minneapolis here, but it's for some reason, never let a good crisis go to waste. Let's make sure we migrate this hate and the untrust all over the nation here. And let's push everybody back inside again with curfews again. And 2 weeks ago, they talked about Donald Trump condemned it. He spoke very negatively about it, but the Democrats wanted to go to a vote by mail. Well, think about this. We're all pushed inside now, and we can't go out at the time when the election comes up for voting. So what? You vote by mail, and we know this would be manipulated. There'd be much fraud involved in the voting by mail. So this is just another part of the puzzle of why they want to keep you inside prior to the elections. If you vote by mail, I'm sure they're going to manipulate this vote, and that's something else to think about right there. Keith, you wanted to play a video from Amy Goodman from Democracy Now! About the police.
Yeah, but the timing will be off here, so we have to do it after the bottom break there. But I would like to say this, though. Sure. You and I talked about this, like this keeping people indoors and stuff is just another precursor to what they have planned here. But, they're already talking about not even opening up the country until September, especially in these blue states. But what got me is when I was talking to you about how they finally reversed this. This was yesterday that we'd mentioned this, but the Tennessee governor's free sock masks that were all treated with registered pesticide, and hundreds of thousands of Tennesseans had picked up those masks. And I just thought, what the heck are people doing? Like, you imagine the breeding environment of those pesticides into your nostrils, and of course mixed with sweat and stuff like that for the moisture from the nasal cavities and stuff like that. But that News Channel 5 has finally said that they've reversed that. But in that coming video, though, it's Amy Goodman there with Democracy Now! And the only reason why I wanted to pick this video out that's coming up is I watched the rise of Germany. I have got so many gigs of old war footage. And what we're seeing, or what you'll hear in this video that's coming, it goes along with these military helicopters that are flying over D.C. As protests continue across the U.S. And of course, the U.S. now is trying to maintain its own green zone. Of course, that's the very city that lied to you and illegally plotted the deaths as well as the destruction of those in the Middle East. And of course, I think this is karma coming full circle. But in lieu of that, I get so upset when I hear these former politicians and or current ones, and in the case of my cousin Obama, which I can't stand, and now George Bush, where Bush, after killing 1 million people over in Iraq over a lie, he came out with a statement on the protest and the death of George Floyd. And to me, the pure hypocrisy of even anyone saying that would almost be like Ronald Reagan talking about what's going on now after not only did he and his administration butcher 200, and I'm not saying killed, I'm saying butchered 200,000 people over there in the Contras war. But and these are the ones that they hail as heroes. I just cannot believe that,
Well, you sent me that yesterday, an email on that. We were talking about that Obama bombing Somalia, of course, other African countries, and Hillary looting Haiti, which we know all to be true. And you never hear anybody talking about that. You don't hear black people saying, "Well, my gosh, if this is a black thing and oppression and violence and against blacks, well, you kind of missed a big piece of the picture here, the puzzle, because my gosh, they have targeted the heck out of the African countries here and bombed them to oblivion. But nobody seems to care about that. out of sight, out of mind. All I care about, I guess, my own backyard here. But, it's interesting that this whole violence thing with this police officer and George Floyd was started over a convenience store clerk calling authorities for receiving a $20 potentially counterfeit bill. Well, a counterfeit bill led to all this when we have a government, a Federal Reserve, they're running the printing presses nonstop right now, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, handing off this debt to future generations here, handing out huge stimulus checks to corporations. Let's see, you got the cruise lines, you got the casinos, airlines, the oil industry, all this money being handed out. There's been a huge distribution of wealth, and they are destroying the middle class. When we come back, we'll go through this video Keith's got for us. Stay tuned. This is What Really Happened. Welcome back. This is What Really Happened, and I'm your host, Steve Elkins, sitting in with Keith Rogers and Dave. And we're going to go back to Keith. He's going to kind of give us a preview of what we're going to hear from Democracy Now! Go ahead and give us a preview, Keith.
All right. Sounds good. First of all, I want to start out with, the deep state is alive and well. And for those people that don't really study history, and I'm not slighting you for not doing that or anything like that, but you can tell exactly where we're at today by learning history. And of course, this comes to this video here with Democracy Now! But the United States in their foreign policy, this is like listening to Secretary Pompeo talking about the autonomy of Hong Kong while they're busy overthrowing the Venezuelan government or trying to, while they're still bombing Syria over there. So in lieu of that, this Democracy Now! Talks about this police state and the war on journalists. This is the same thing that happened to Iraq. And if you weren't an embedded reporter, and boy, do I have stuff on that Iraq war. But this is what's going on here, and what the CIA has done abroad for decades, they are now doing here at home. So, Mike, would you please play that clip, please?
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the Quarantine Report, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Hundreds of thousands of people marched and protested in cities across the United States Tuesday, defying citywide curfews, braving police and military repression, shrugging off fears over the spread of the coronavirus in order to protest the police killing of George Floyd by Minneapolis police. In Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz said Tuesday the state's Department of Human Rights has opened a civil rights investigation into the Minneapolis Police Department.
The investigation will review MPD's policies, procedures, and practices over the last 10 years to determine if the department has utilized systemic discriminatory practices towards people of color.
Legal observers believe Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison is preparing to charge the 3 other officers involved in the killing of George Floyd, including 2 who held Floyd to the pavement while Officer Derek Chauvin pressed his knee into Floyd's neck while he repeatedly gasped, "I can't breathe," before falling still. On Tuesday, the Minneapolis Public School District said it was terminating its contract with the city's police department to provide school resource officers. Meanwhile, Minnesota's AFL-CIO coalition of labor unions has joined calls demanding Minneapolis Police Union President Bob Kroll resign after he called George Floyd a violent criminal, described protesters as terrorists, and called on police to expand their use of force. In April, Kroll told a radio podcaster he wasn't bothered by shootings he's been involved in.
I've been involved in 3 shootings myself, and not one of them has bothered me. Maybe I'm different.
Bob Kroll was welcomed to the stage last October by President Trump at a Trump 2020 campaign rally in Minneapolis. In Houston, Texas, 16 members of George Floyd's family joined a crowd of 60,000 protesters who marched to City Hall to remember Floyd, who spent most of his life in Houston. After headlines, will go to Houston to speak with 2 of his friends. A warning to our TV audience, the next story contains disturbing graphic footage. Arrest warrants have been issued for 6 Atlanta police officers after they tased 2 black college students, dragging them from their car for allegedly violating the city's curfew Saturday night. One officer was filmed smashing the driver window of the car. Another slashed the car's tires. 2 of the officers have already been fired. The victims were 20-year-old Spelman College student Tanaya Pilgrim and 22-year-old Morehouse College student Messiah Young, who suffered a fractured wrist and needed 24 stitches. He spoke on Tuesday.
I feel a little safer now that these monsters are off of the street and no longer able to terrorize anyone else.
There is an arrest warrant for 6 Atlanta police officers in this case. In Washington, D.C., 700 soldiers with the U.S. Army's 82nd Airborne armed with fixed bayonets have been deployed to enforce the district's 7 p.m. curfew. The Army says another 1,400 soldiers are ready to be mobilized to the nation's capital. President Trump reportedly ordered the show of military force as part of Operation Themis, the code name for his domestic military operation against protesters. The name refers to an ancient Greek goddess of law and order. Meanwhile, the Washington Post reports U.S. Attorney General William Barr personally ordered police to beat and tear gas peaceful protesters gathered near the White House Monday in order to clear the path for President Trump to walk to the nearby St. John's Episcopal Church, where Trump posed for photos holding a Bible above his head. Among the hundreds of people tear gassed was the former assistant rector of St. John's. President Trump visited St. John Paul II National Shrine Tuesday, sparking a new round of criticism from religious leaders. Washington, D.C. Archbishop Wilton Gregory said Trump's visit at this time was, quote, baffling and reprehensible. He is the first African-American Archbishop of Washington, D.C. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison has ordered his embassy in Washington to investigate an assault on an Australian camera crew at Monday's peaceful protest outside the White House. 7 Network reporter Amelia Brace was clubbed, tear gassed, and shot with rubber-coated bullets, while her camera operator, Tim Myers, was hit with a riot shield and punched in the face in a live broadcast that aired across Australia.
We've also seen tear gas being used. Here we go, they're moving through again. This is exactly what it looks like. Exactly what it looks like. We're just safely.
Oh, whoa.
The Committee to Protect Journalists has documented at least 125 press freedom violations across the United States through Monday, and new reports of police attacks on reporters continue to emerge. Here in New York, Mayor Bill Deblasio has ordered nightly curfews from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. through Sunday. On Tuesday, Governor Andrew Cuomo threatened to call out the National Guard, saying the New York Police Department had failed to protect people and property overnight Monday when some people set fires and smashed their way into retail stores. Mayor Bill Deblasio rejected the call at a Tuesday news conference.
Someone needs a history lesson. When outside armed forces go into communities, no good comes of it. We have seen this for decades, go back to the 50s, 60s with the civil rights movement on through all the way up to today.
The New York Police Department says it arrested 200 curfew violators overnight compared to about 700 the night before. In Oregon, an estimated 10,000 people filled Burnside Bridge in Portland Tuesday, laying face down on the pavement for 9 minutes, the length of time George Floyd was pinned beneath 3 Minneapolis police officers who killed him on May 25th. Later Tuesday, police unleashed volleys of tear gas, flash grenades, and pepper spray at protesters who were marching on the downtown jail and police precinct. In Los Angeles, where nearly 3,000 protesters have been arrested since Friday, UCLA issued a statement Tuesday saying it would no longer allow police to use its college baseball stadium as a field jail.
All right. The difference,
Keith, your interpretation, Keith?
Yeah, the difference of this is where we hear about them using the National Guard, and then where we also hear about them using the military, which is two different, quite a bit of things there, you know.
Yeah.
But as I said here, the main thing is where we see those that are warring against the journalists that are just there to do the coverage and stuff. And what I think is going to be interesting is when a lot of this settles down and a lot of people to return to home and everything like that, that the internet's going to become inundated with other videos that aren't covered by the press, and we'll actually see what's going on here. But I wanted to sum this up in one way. When we look at videos of how, say, these U.S.-led wars all based on lies and stuff, of what they've done to other countries, done to their populations, destroyed their cultures and everything like that, that now we see this being done here at home. And of course, the journalists are always the ones that are targeted. And sadly, I always think of that Chris Kyle there with American Sniper, knowing that he served 4 tours in Iraq. Well, that's one thing. Great. I'm glad he could serve his country, but it was all based on lies. And then you have to think of the amount of money that was generated off of that film, where everyone went to see it like that, of the American Sniper like that. But this is more of that exceptionalism. And sadly, as you and I and David talked about before there, Gator, is the fact that a lot of police today are former military, and I have asked veterans that I've talked to here on this show, or on my show anyway, what was the worst thing that you had to overcome upon separation of the military? And of course they said getting out of the kill mode. So that is what's important. Back to you.
I agree. What I was disappointed with, the mainstream media, of course, like I said, they're trying to picture Donald Trump and try to formulate this image that he's a dictator here. And they did some misreporting as usual. I expected that. And reporting that they used tear gas to push back the protesters. Turned out it was actually smoke bomb. It was not tear gas, because if you notice, you look at the pictures, the police officers would have had masks on themselves if it was tear gas, because they don't want to inhale the tear gas. So these were just flash bomb kind of smoke bombs. It was not tear gas, but the mainstream media made that case because they want to have this picture in our minds that Donald Trump is a dictator, and he's squashing on your First Amendment right to protest. Like I said, protesting is a great thing. I'm all for that, addressing grievances, whether the state level or the federal level. But looting and burning and destroying and hurting other people is not part of your First Amendment rights. And I was disappointed that actually she had mentioned in the clip there that the tear gas, that was not true. That was another false. And usually she's pretty good about picking out the falses, but that was smoke bomb. It was not tear gas. Dave, to you.
Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff going on, and the media is being attacked and all of this stuff. There was another incident of another Aussie Channel 9 being attacked, and CNN was being attacked and all that stuff, and tear gas and all this heavily militarized stuff. It really is kind of ridiculous, and I agree with you that we have a First Amendment right to assemble and to have redress of grievance and stuff like that. Right. But when we start infringing upon other people's life and liberty and property, when we start breaking things, we start burning things, we start hurting people, that's where that right ends, because we don't have the right to go take rights away from other people.
Right.
Period.
Right.
And that's what's going on. That's what they're doing, with all this looting and all this violence, going on. They're taking away from other people. And so we have to be respectful of one another. Yes, we need our rights. And everybody talks about rights, but nobody wants to talk about the responsibilities that come along with those rights.
Yeah, I agree. Now, Keith, do you have the other video on the Greg Manarino, or do I need to send that over to Mike?
I can get it for you real fast if you want.
Yeah, I thought you'd sent both those over. We're going to talk about some economics here. I think we'll probably do it after we come back after the break. But no, I agree, Dave and Keith, that their manufacturing of a racial divide is not as great as they're telling us. Fanning those flames of racism and the hatred and building up this division is their goal. And I said that's being used in a political sense to bring down Donald Trump before 2020 elections. No doubt about it.
Yep. What I'm also seeing here too is that America has to look strong there, because remember, the entire world is looking on America right now, especially with this collapsing financial system. And remember that 80% of the world uses a dollar there. And if the U.S. goes down, it's going to be hell.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because we talked about the digital currency, the push for a digital currency, which is going to happen. It's going to happen, people. It really is. And they've got a good excuse now, because your money is filthy. It's got bacteria. It's got viruses on it. It's got fecal matter on it, They're going to get rid of that. Of course, they'll use that as leverage for further debt they're going to get us into, no doubt about it. Money in your pocket they cannot control, but they can control a digital currency. They'll own it all. They'll shut off your ATM in a crisis. They could leverage everything in your account, savings, checking, everything they can. They'll leverage your 401ks. They'll leverage all that for future debt, no doubt about it. And they'll just keep writing more checks and printing more money up. And of course, doing so every time they do that, you just get a currency devaluation and you have higher inflation. I feel bad for the future generations, Keith and David, that my daughter and my grandchildren are going to have a really rough life. The debts that are being racked up, and the freedoms that are being taken away, and the rights and freedoms that are being taken away. And I never in my wildest dreams would have ever believed, you probably would agree too, but that we would be at this point in time that what we thought we had was freedom is, at our age, we can see the losses in our freedoms and our rights because of our age. People coming into the world now won't know the difference because they'll start from a different starting point than we did.
Yeah, Steve, that's the whole point of it. See, is whether it's an Iraqi, an Afghan, or what they call collateral damage and stuff, what you've done abroad and you start doing here at home, when you take someone's right abroad, and then it's so easy to sit there and say, hey, we're going to oppress this people now, then it's so easy to see that. But realize that has this ripple effect, because eventually, like curfews and all this, they're going to come for your rights.
Right. Exactly. Any comments on that, Dave?
Yeah, I think Keith said it. Because it's like the Gulag Archipelago. You're going to talk about, well, they're coming for these people, you're coming from these people, you're coming from these people, and you sit there and you did absolutely nothing, and now they're coming for you. And guess what? There's nobody left to stand up for you.
Yeah, that German pastor's poem. Yep.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I remember that. Boy, I tell you, it's well, I can tell you right now, during the quarantine, the lockdowns, have you noticed? Well, you and I talked about it. The food supply chain has been disrupted. I'm a little disrupted. I'm really upset by that. That every time I go out shopping, I see the prices going up and up and up. And the very idea that Keith was telling me that, well, I was trying to figure out how we went below a penny on our oil, and we're now currently around $37 a barrel for crude oil.
They broke the market, Steve, is what it is. And they're pumping so much money in at a thin air that they're devaluating the currency in a massive, massive way. So that's why the prices are going up. It's not that prices are going up, it's that the value of money is just taking a nosedive because they're printing, air quote, digitally, trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars out of thin air. And the Federal Reserve isn't bound by all this stuff, and they just keep creating money to buy up stocks and assets and all this stuff, plunge protection team and all that stuff. So yeah, that's what's going on. That's why we have inflation.
All right, we'll get more back into this when we come back after the break. This is What Really Happened. Steve Elkins sitting in for Mike Rivero, my good friend Dave, and Keith Rogers. We'll be right back. And we are back. This is What Really Happened. Steve Elkins sitting in for Mike Rivero, and Dave and Keith Rogers with me here. Keith, do you think we have enough time before the top of the hour?
Think, go ahead and play it.
Let's go ahead and play this here. There's a clip from Greg Manarino, and it's talking about what's coming with an economic collapse, bigger than what we just saw. Go ahead and play that clip.
Hey everybody, it's me, Gregory Manarino. I'm sorry, I'm like kind of like laughing or whatever it is. It's another situation that you can't believe, but it's in our face yet again. What am I talking about? Well, we got another ADP jobs report this morning. We lost 2.76 million. This is following an historic drop last month. And wouldn't you know it, stock futures are higher across the board. Stocks are poised for yet another rally. You can't make it up. You can't make it up if you tried to do it. But that's the situation. So it's just so twisted. It's so twisted. And that's why I started off with, it's just disbelief. It's disbelief in many ways. All right, so let's talk about a few other things here. Gold and silver remain under pressure a little bit. Cryptocurrency is getting a bit higher. Crude oil is fractionally lower on some kind of compromise from OPEC. Whatever. Okay, they're propping up crude oil. You know it. I know it. The mechanism in place here is simple. Prop up crude oil. That's all. They can jawbone it. They can say what they want. Crude oil is massively overvalued. And why? Because they need it high to prop up the stock market. It's all a game. It's a game. Stock futures, like I said, are higher. Why? Well, you know who's buying it all. It's the hedge funds. I explained this to you just, I don't know, a few days ago. I said hedge funds are getting in here. They're buying the market. Stocks are going up. And that's exactly what's going on here. And these hedge funds are getting cash directly from who? Yeah, the Federal Reserve. These hedge funds, the Wall Street hedge funds, have a main line right to the Federal Reserve, along with the Wall Street banks and the Federal Reserve themselves, who has a trading desk, yeah, at the New York Fed. You don't believe me? Look it up for yourself. Google it. Does the Federal Reserve have a trading desk? Yeah, you'll find out that they do. Anyway, a 10-year yield is higher, 0.716. You know I've been beating this to death. But in this kind of environment, when you got that 10-year yield moving up, what does it mean? Cash is leaving the debt markets, going into the stock market. So easy. This is risk on, which means metals are going to fall under pressure. Cryptocurrencies could fall under a little bit of pressure here, although they're catching a bid right now. Look, my job here for all of us is to keep you ahead of this market so you know exactly what to do, when to do it. That's what this is all about. I promised all of you since, I don't know how long, forever now. It seems like forever. I've been out here quite a while, that I will never let you down, that I will always give you cutting edge, actionable information on this blog. You will not lose. Won't let it happen, like I've been saying forever. Anyway, so let's set the scene. Another abysmal round of economic news, and stocks are off to the races yet again. Nothing short of divine intervention will stop this market from moving higher. That's what they're doing here. It's a distraction. Look at the stock market. Forget about millions upon tens of millions of people losing their jobs. Forget about how there's no profits being made by these corporate profits actually could be worse. That's the truth. But all these numbers are fake anyway. And the economy is dead. We got a long, long recovery, regardless of like Larry Kudlow, who keeps talking about booming recovery coming. Get ready, everybody. Oh, okay. All right, Larry, well, maybe you can explain to us how that's going to happen when there's been a grand culling, deliberate culling of small businesses. It's incredible. It's absolutely freaking incredible. All right, with that said, people, this guy loves you a lot. We know what the scene is. We got it covered. And we know what to do to take advantage of it. In these risk-on environments, you got depressed metals. What are you going to do?
Second hour coming up of the whatreallyhappened.com here and whatreallyhappened.com. We'll be right back in this next second hour. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. Open lines, 1-800-313-9443. Want to hear from you. Remember the rules. They apply. And welcome back. This is the second hour of What Really Happened. Steve Elkins sitting in for Mike Rivero. Got Dave with me and Keith Rogers. 1-800-313-9443. The phone lines are open. I want to hear what you have to say. Comments, questions. Please stay on topic. We're talking about economics right now, but we can go back a little bit on the riots if you want to talk about that a little bit. And quarantines, a little bit of COVID-19. You can talk about that if you want. Those are all in the topics and the headlines still right now. We can all talk about those. Keith, what I caught, this is a different clip than the one I have that I think you sent me, maybe two different clips, but what I missed in this clip you just played here was Greg Mandarino talking about how important oil is with the military industrial complex. I didn't hear it in that clip. It was in my clip. And I agree. It really is. Of course, Wall Street depends on high oil prices as if it's the base. It's the core, the nucleus of Wall Street itself. You have to have high oil to have a halfway decent stock market. And which is bothering me is that we're talking about, first there was a glut of oil. Prices dropped, went in the toilet. I mean, below a penny. And they're actually in negative territory. Then it's come up in the last 2 weeks from nothing to $37 a barrel for crude oil. And of course, this has to be manipulated because they've got a glut of oil. You told me there's at least 3 or 4 miles of railroad track tankers around your area there. They're just full of oil sitting there. And they have no places to really store it. I don't know. They're using all the tankers. They're filling everything up they possibly can, shoving it off to the side. At the same time, they're able to do that to keep the prices up high where they want them. They're for somehow reason they've created a food supply here, a food shortage supply on the protein side here. They've euthanized cows, pigs, chickens, and instead of maybe getting them quicker to slaughter and to a packaging place to freeze them and for a future time, they're using this lame excuse that COVID-19 has caused a shortage in people to process the food line here. And so we must just destroy the food, pour the milk down the drains, destroy the food, create a food shortage here, which is making everything worse. I mean, can it get any worse?
Yeah,
creating the situation here.
David, why don't you
go ahead and make your comments so we pick these calls up again?
Right. Fantastic. Yeah, it can definitely get worse. And we've already seen a big disconnect with these markets from reality because, as you know, the labor participation index and all that, the unemployment numbers have never been accurate. It's never really been reflecting the truth on the street between, Joe Six-Pack and people trying to survive all this stuff. So we lose more than half of our GDP through this COVID shutdown. And we have all these shortages and all this disruption, but yet the stock market can still rally. I think this really underscores the fact that this market is in fantasy land. It's all fiction. It's Beck's bovine excrement, as Mike would put it.
Yeah. Let's take some calls here. We got one in Colorado here coming in. Janine, you're on the show.
Hi there.
Hello. What's on your mind, Janine?
How are you doing today?
We're doing great.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing
okay, great. Well, I'm going to try to figure out how to stay within the confines of just love, and not get, angry at me for saying something that's not just pure love. So we live out on a farm. Our farm is paid for. My husband makes below poverty level wages. He was in a car accident 3 years ago on his way to work. And now he's less of a man, so he gets a little bit above minimum wage. And I'm disabled. That's just the way it is. Our farm's paid for. Trying to get
what do you farm? What do you farm, Janine? Janine, what do you farm?
Nothing now.
Nothing. Okay.
We have no money to farm. We live on our farm.
Okay. Have you thought about leasing out your farm, the land?
No, because when you allow someone to come on your property, you have to abide by your state laws or whatever, and, if there was a rapist on my property, I'm not going to let him rape me and my grandkids to sit there and smile at him. So we're not going to do that. So I like my safety, and my neighbor is going to try to get me hooked up with the guy that grows hemp for making the building materials.
Right.
It's a building material type of product. And I know that everybody, a lot of people think that's heroin and it's destroyed the world, but that's not true. So we may be able to do something like that in the future. But, for now, our own, I can't use the word race because then you'll get mad at me. Our own kind look down on us because we're kind of poor and we've been through this car wreck thing and it's been really bad. The other people that aren't our kind hate us just because we are who we are. We're kind of like, you might say, just kind of live in this messed up culture that has been created through the last 100 years. And the one thing that I am trying to do is organize a neighborhood watch. Because there has been a lot of talk where I can use the word group, hopefully, groups that are doing bad things in cities may try to come out and start targeting people in rural areas. Now, when you live a half a mile or more from your closest neighbor, really wouldn't be hard for a pack. Oh, that's the wrong word. That's racist. Let's see, a group in a car or a truck to come out on your property during the day when most people are at work. Because a lot of people around here, though they have farms and ranches, they still have to work during the day to make a living. So anyway, if one of these types of folk in a vehicle came out on someone's property, like me, if I'm out here alone with my 4 and 6-year-old grandchild, of course we would be victimized, perhaps, which is totally legal. That's totally fine with everyone. We would be the bad people should I pick up a boomstick and deal with someone like that coming out on my property uninvited. Everyone.
Well, Janine, I'm going to say I think you might underestimate the Second Amendment there. You can cite the castle law. If somebody comes on your property and tries to break in your property, you have every right to use the lethal force. That's what I plan on doing. I'm in the same situation as you, except I'm out in the country. I do have neighbors nearby.
Colorado's a blue state. Not here. Not here. They have to actually come into your home. And then you had better prove that they had their tallywhacker out and they were getting ready to use it on you, you know, and the group of folk that I'm living around right now are not going to comply with that. They're going to say, if you step on the property, you mean us harm.
So how close are you to setting up your house? How close are you to setting up your group watch?
I'm trying to work on it right now on a Facebook community that is got a lot of blue folk in it. Good. But, you know, I mean, we're working on it because we're going to have to do something. If this thing continues at the rate that it has been going, I can see a lot of people out in their rural homes being murdered and homes being burned and everything taken out of the home, including boomsticks and whatnot, if people have those things.
Jeannie, this is what those in power want.
Weaponry for the pack, you know. Oops, that's the wrong
this is
word.
what those in power want.
Yeah, they do. You're right.
What they want? What
they want a civil war.
They want us to.
They want a civil war.
Well, they do. So here's my big question for you guys. Do we just lay down and say, "Oh well, we don't. We got to be full of love now. We can't fight back. We can't. Oh, if we fight back, we're bad people."
Jeannie,
you know,
I think
everyone says the media.
Jeannie, I think you're taking wrong what Steve mentioned at the beginning of the show. That was due to a call yesterday that was going down against heavy on blacks and stuff. We have to realize that we're all in this together. And
no, I'm not in this with the people that are burning and looting and rioting.
No, I realize that. I realize that, but
as that.
Right, but you got to remember here, this is a deliberate attention to push these rioters at us, to drive attention away from the government's crimes onto, it's all a distraction.
Absolutely. So how much do we lay down, though, just to keep them from being right about what they say about us? How far do we let them take it before we turn around and say, gee, what would George Washington do? You know, gee, what would Thomas Jefferson do? You know, because I don't think they would have tolerated it to this point. Do you?
No. Well, that's just it. And sadly, we have too many people that rather sit around in their homes and play games and stuff like that instead of being out on the streets.
Do you think George Washington would have been worried about being called a racist?
No.
Because he didn't see himself as a racist. That for the time he was living in, he was not a racist then. He's only a racist to us now.
But we need to put on our big boy and big girl panties and quit getting scared about what somebody might call us or say about us. The fact of the matter is,
I'm not into
we
the
draw
PC.
a line in the sand.
I agree. Okay. Hey, Janine, I got more calls here I need to get to. Thank you for calling. Appreciate it. Peter in LA, you're on the show.
Yeah, hi guys.
Peter, are you there? Yep.
Yeah, can you hear me?
You're on. Yep. We hear you.
Somebody was referring earlier to the CIA's formula for government overthrows being brought to the United States.
I did.
It's worth mentioning that under the Obama administration, under the Holder and the Lynch Department of Justice administrations, the Obama Justice Department was going after particularly banks, a lot of the banks that had been laundering money for drugs or terrorists and things like that, or, had been found doing something like LIBOR, the LIBOR manipulations and things like that. They were going to these guys, and I sent all this stuff to Michael the other day, but, he's on vacation, so, but then they were saying, well, listen, we can proceed with this prosecution, or we can drop the prosecution and you can give donations to these democratic causes, among which were Black Lives Matter and Antifa. Now, it's also worth noting, of course, that George Soros funded Antifa. George Soros funded Hillary Clinton's campaign. He was the largest single donor. George Soros and Antifa and his his apparatuses overseas have been used by the CIA, is protected by the CIA, to foment these color revolutions, right?
Right,
but there's definitely a link there, and Obama funded, with this shaking down of these banks and other businesses by the DOJ under his administration, funded his own brown shirts, which then, as soon as of course, was beating up people during the campaign, and to no police response. And then after the campaign, they were rioting for over a year. And now, of course, we see what's going on now before this election.
Yeah. Hey, Peter, can I say something? Do you have web access? Do you have internet access?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
George Webb has a new video out that he put out this morning here, and he's right on cue with what you're talking about here with George Soros, Obama. But what was interesting about that was under Obama, the increase of over, I think it was 300 and some thousand Pakistanis that have been allowed in this country, which are from these war-torn areas. They're pre-trained military. And I think you should watch that video there to see what's really going on here. And this is all well documented.
Well, this is it's all well documented, frankly, about what the Obama DOJ did and Antifa and funding these people and who funded them, Soros, and who funded the Democrats, right? I mean, it's all clearly there.
And remember when they, Peter, remember they ran that petition there to arrest George Soros there. I think it reached over 500 and some odd thousand votes when I saw it, and nothing's been done.
Nothing happened, right?
And it won't be done. He like Epstein, is protected by the CIA.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, to your first caller's point, to the lady, the rural Americans are going to be left hung out to dry like whites in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Well, do you remember what they said? Do you remember they said during the Revolutionary War, "Fire when you see the whites of their eyes"? I think that's close enough on my property, in my face there. I'm going to defend myself, and I'll cite the castle law to protect my goods and protect my family.
It's been turned around, Steve. It's now fire when you see the eyes of the whites. And that's kind of where we're going here, with these kind of rules of engagement where we can't defend ourselves anymore.
Well, remember also, Peter, down in California where they showed those big, huge protests, most of those were all white. Of course, they lived in the upper echelon area of L.A. and stuff like that. And they weren't smashing windows and stuff. Remember in those other videos, though, there were agent provocateurs in them.
That's right.
Well, I live in L.A. Well, I live in the suburb of L.A. It's a good one. Our home it's a 6-figure or 7-figure home. And literally 300 yards from my house, people, they're hitting all the drugstores, the pharmacies, all the pot stores and all the pharmacies for all the drugs and the opiates and all that. They're hitting them all. And there was a pharmacy that got hit and burned not even 300 yards from my house.
Yeah.
So listen, I watch this stuff. Had they come on my property, they would have been in a world of hurt.
Yep.
But they're not going on to the residential properties because everybody's at home and everybody like me would blast them into the middle of next week.
Good. Very good. Hey, Peter, I need to move on here. I've got a lot of calls lining up here. I appreciate your call always. Thank you, Peter. Moving on here to John in Tennessee. You're on the show.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. So I'll be brief. Janine brought up something. She made me think of something. You guys saw about David Dorn, right? St. Louis police chief.
No, that doesn't ring a bell at all.
No, it doesn't ring a bell here.
Oh, really? Okay. Former police chief of St. Louis, David Dorn, was murdered. And there's a 2-minute video that was on Facebook of him drawing his last breath, breathing on the street because the guys were looting a pawn store. And they were doing so it was basically over grabbing televisions. So now we know that they're going to have George Floyd's funeral apparently in 3 cities. I don't know if you heard that. They're going to cart that body around and have 3 funerals in 3 cities. And all the black leaders are, whatever. Are they going to go to Dorn's funeral? There's the height of hypocrisy right there that shows you there's nothing to do with black people anymore.
Well, it's funny you mentioned this. But have you heard from Al Sharpton? Have you heard from Jesse Jackson Jr., any of the black leaders to condemn any of this? Have you heard from these guys? I haven't.
Well, they'll show up at the funeral. They'll show up when they're told to show up.
Amazing.
Right?
I guess. Maybe.
I saw the daughter on TV of George, and she reminded me of the guy that came out after that school shooting. She was all smiles and stuff.
Yeah.
If you just lost your father, would you be all smiles?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, we got to move along.
Well,
hey, John. John, I need to move on here. Sorry, buddy. We got a lot of calls here. Thank you for your call. Dan in Texas, you're on the show. Dan, are you there?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Hey, I would say regarding that call yesterday, Steve, that New Jersey's famous masked man truly unmasked, and it was disgusting. And other than that, about the rule, I've always been able to think about what I want to say and get it said within 30 seconds. And I wouldn't mind the 30-second rule. So that's all I had to say.
All right. Well, we appreciate
it, Dan. Thank you very much. Thanks for supporting that. Like I said, I want to keep the message positive here, and I don't want to go generalizations, and I don't want to make it about race at all. We're all in this. We're humans. Let's just say we're all humans. Okay. I'm getting tired of the color issue. We're all Americans. We're human. So we're going back to the phones here, and we got Chance in West Virginia.
Yes. Hello, gentlemen. Can you hear me?
Yep. Go ahead.
Yep. Hear you fine.
Yeah. I'm no big fan of this Trump. But what do they expect him to do? I mean, protecting life and property is a priority, Yeah. And when I go into town, I still see some of these maroons with these face diapers on their face for this shoe flu here. And, I have no faith in these people. Man, I long for the good old days, before this lung pal sickened virus, when store keepers would call the police if you walked in with a mask.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't believe they believe you're a selfish capitalist bastard if you don't have a face mask on and want to kill everybody's grandma. I mean, this is where their mindset is at. And I can't help but think, what's going on in the background? Are they going after any of the deep state here? And they're not telling us. Are they having any secret interrogations, getting ready to convict anybody? Would any of you guys happen to know?
All I hear is it's all about Russia.
Yeah. Demonize Russia. And it's like those QAnon, 40,000 indictments. Nothing's going to happen. We'll be right back. What really happened? I am not Mike Rivero. I'm Steve Elkins, and I'm joined by my good friends Dave and Keith Rogers. Well, I guess we lost a call here. Looks like Dustin from New Jersey dropped. He has some interesting comments. Here. Dustin? He's back?
He didn't go anywhere. I'm trying to see something.
Oh, he didn't go anywhere. Okay. All right, Dustin in New Jersey, you're on the show.
Don't drop me, bro. Don't drop me, bro.
Oh, no, that bro thing again.
Remember that?
Well, if he drops you, we promise you won't drop you on your head.
Don't tase me, bro.
I can't breathe.
Hey,
what's on your mind, Dustin?
Yeah, I can't. Hey, first they came for the Jews. I wasn't Jewish. Then they came for the communists, the socialists, capitalists, but I wasn't any of those. But then there was nobody left nobody left to protect me. I was by myself. So, I mean, that statement is what. Look at what you keep bringing up the Iraq war. Was it Dave or Keith?
Keith.
That was Keith.
Keith. Look. You guys ever see the footage of Syria, like the drone footage of like the city?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what your government in the West.
Yeah, look at Raqqa over in Syria, and look at what they did over in Iraq. It just looks like Dresden.
Yeah, it's absolutely disgusting. And both sides of the aisle, standing ovation when they talk about spending trillions of dollars murdering people on the other side of the planet. Really? Everybody agrees on that? Think about that.
You don't think your government's capable? Let me tell you, I know some people think your government, the soldiers or troops, wouldn't fire on you. Well, the police do. Okay, so the troops having bayonets on their rifles, if push comes to shove, they'll use them. You know, they're not. I mean, it's not till you see their white eyes. They have Reapers up there. Remember that reconnaissance Reaper that was flying around Minneapolis?
Yeah.
You know, it's not too hard
Dustin,
to fit it with
Dustin, I have a theory.
Hellfire.
I have a theory. Dustin, you remember Jade Helm, right? You remember Jade Helm?
Yeah, know the Jade Helm.
That was pretty much a UN type operation with the United States assisting and helping out, and which I'm sure they both learned something. But I think that whole thing was about. I think your military, a certain portion, a good portion of the military, would have a hard time firing on their own citizenry. That's why the United Nations is a big part of that. I think the UN peacekeepers, war makers, would be the ones coming in to fire on U.S. citizens. I could underestimate the military. I could underestimate these guys, but I would hope that they would not replicate what we see with law enforcement.
What about Blackwater and Silver Canopy and Purple Shovel? You think they'll have a hard time?
No, they won't. They won't. Those are mercenaries.
Believe it or not, there's a lot of them working as contractors in this country.
Yeah,
you know, so and remember when the shooting starts, you know, the chickens have come home to roost, guys. You know what? This is what happened in Ukraine, right? I mean, think about the pallets of bricks that were left in the cities here. Instead of pallets of bricks, what about pallets of 50 calibers and tow and stingers? Because that they can do.
Justin,
you know,
there's
it's not
another
a hard
one there.
thing to do, you know? I mean,
there's another one, Justin.
I want everybody to keep that in mind. You know, there's stuff going on here, and I still look back, the whole pandemic thing. Isn't it like a coincidence? This is happening now. Like all this stuff, and I wish Trump, because you know, you guys know my stance on Trump. I voted for him, but I mean, he should have came out the night and did some. Nobody's done. You notice none of your government officials actually come out and do like a big nightly press conference like for this, like a State of the Union. I mean, we're kind of in a freaking crisis, right? Nothing. You had that moron Engel in New York that said, well, if it wasn't an election year, you know, I mean, this is your leaders, man. You know, we're leaderless. You know, it's just, we're in deep crap, man. I mean, the riots have been going on for what? A week now, almost. You know, I mean, come on.
Hey, Dustin, I would Google or whatever browser you use the $700 million worth of ammo lost in Afghanistan, and tie that in with these Obamaites that under which George Webb talks about infiltrating Pakistan and stuff. You know, if they can bring drugs, if the CIA can get their drugs in this country, you can sure bet they've got their arms too.
Oh yeah.
Don't forget Fast and
I'm
Furious.
just going to leave you with this, guys.
Yeah.
It's not just about Obama.
Iran
it's about
Contra.
it's about the system.
That too.
You're messing with the system, okay, guys?
Yep.
The system will do anything it takes to keep intact. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's Obama, Bush, Clinton, Trump. The system. Look at William Barr. You guys mentioned it. Where's the indictments? Where's Rudy Giuliani and Sean Hannity? Remember? QAnon? There ain't no indictments coming. I said that when I called in multiple times. There is no indictments coming. You don't indict your own group.
Yeah, QAnon is another psyop. QAnon is another psyop, no doubt about it. Yeah.
All right, Steve. Have a good night, you guys.
All right, appreciate it. Yeah, I lost faith in QAnon. I have friends who are really into that, but I'm sorry, 40,000 indictments, and I haven't seen one yet, so it's a psyop. We'll be right back. This is What Really Happened. Steve Elkins and Keith Rogers and my good friend Dave coming back. Steve Elkins back here. My good friends Dave and Keith Rogers. Before we play a clip, Keith plays us a clip, we're going to go to our next caller here in Florida. Mark in Florida, you're on the show.
Hey, gentlemen. Good show. Don't answer the question, but who were the Bolsheviks? What I'm seeing with these protesters, at least the peaceful ones, is they're wearing a mask, and they're protesting the imbeciles in government that have locked them down and ordered them to wear a mask under a fraudulent lie called COVID-19 or coronavirus.
Can't be identified.
So they're protesting the The liars, I mean, they're going to the criminals and asking the criminals not to be criminals. It's not going to work.
No, it's like Jared Kushner telling Trump to release prisoners from jail.
That's amazing. Yeah, release the prisoners from jail and then put a woman who owns a hairdressing salon, throw her in jail instead for opening her business, trying to feed her children. Amazing. Empty the jails, put her in jail. Crazy.
Right. So if you've studied the Bolshevism at all, this is how the Bolsheviks took over, and they're everywhere.
I have a PDF.
I'd like to see the protesters go into the legislatures and watch the imbeciles that believe the lie take out the ones that are lying to them. And once the ashes and the smoke clears, then us thinking people might have something to repair and work with. But the Anti-Federalists had it right. The District of Columbia wants to take over the states, and this is how they're doing it. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. Hey, Keith, we got 2 more calls. Let's take these calls, then we play your video. What do you think of that?
Okay, go ahead.
Is that right? Mark in Philadelphia, you're on the show.
Hello?
Mark, Philadelphia. Yeah, you're on live.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'd like to address is, number one, I'm a veteran. I come from a long line of veterans. My brother was in Vietnam. My father was in World War II. My grandfather was in World War II. My great-great-grandfather served in the Civil War. Why? To protect the Constitution, to hopefully provide a pathway for families, to protect the families, and hopefully for them to have a better way of life. But since the Civil War, we have all become economic slaves to the corporation. And then following, in the last 100 years plus, they've used the carrot and the stick to put people into a comfortably numb situation in their lives where they don't really ask the deeper questions. And the deeper question here is, who is the enemy? Okay? We have police forces across this nation that have been sent over through public funding, government funding, and or private funding. They've been given a free trip over to a little nation that is supposed to have been our best buddy ally. And we send them lots and lots and lots of money. But on June 8th, 1967, they attacked our USS Liberty.
That's
and
right.
by the way, they're still attacking our liberty.
Yep.
Okay? So look at the detail of okay? So I know that there's people that think that those people are special, but I'm going to tell you something. The thing is that they portray themselves to be the good do-gooders, the real do-gooders, and they also portray themselves to be white. However, if you back them in the corner, they won't admit they're white. They'll say they're from the tribe, from that group, right. That's special people. And by the way, in the late 1800s, the Schofield Bible was created. And the group of these special people, they hired Schofield to create the Bible, which then infiltrated every ministry across our nation, which then set forth that these people were special, and you better not question them because they're right next to God. I'm sorry, but they're not, and they have infiltrated our government at multiple levels. They own our legal system. They own our medical system. Rockefeller was the one that established the drug system that we are currently under. And it's a study of pathology. So we have the military-industrial complex, and we have the medical-industrial complex. The largest healthcare provider in the United States is the Veterans Service Administration, the VA hospital system. Look into the depths of that and find out who really controls it. Who controls it? Psychiatry. Who's behind that? Big Pharma. Okay? So the thing is, what we got to ask is, who is the real enemy, and why are they hiding? They are chameleons. They have infiltrated our government. They've infiltrated across the board, and we've got to ferret them out because they've infiltrated and they want to destroy us from within. And that's why they have to appeal to these subgroups, these minorities, because they can't come at us directly because we way outnumber them. So I'll just leave it at that. Ask the deeper questions, because that's what's, we're in a psyop, and we are in civil war right now. It's not in our face yet, but they are at it constantly and have been for a long time. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Mark, excellent commentary. Appreciate that call. Go back to the phones here. Milton in Pennsylvania, you're on the show.
Yes. Right on, brother Mark. We are in civil war. I gather we're also form a Glock party here, not Block, Glock party. Maybe something more powerful, but just a pun intended. But with Antifa, that's the back door there. They're proxies. Are they not?
Yep. I agree. I think they are. Yeah. And I think the Democrats are supporting them and Soros is supporting them. No doubt about it. This is all, this is very political. This is not about one guy that's been brutally murdered. This is very political. This is a takedown for Donald Trump. This is just one of many agendas they're throwing at us. No doubt about it.
And I believe it fits right along with this mask stuff and all this, obey the rules. They were supposed to be, suggestions, not laws.
I agree.
All of a sudden, somehow they became laws. And I mean, we're going to have to grit our teeth and fight this one and stop just talking about it.
Well, you're going to have to grit your teeth real good because the mandatory vaccine is going to be rolled out. So get prepared for that one. Push back on that one.
Well, yeah, we're already working with neighbors what's going on with that.
Good.
So
Good.
I'm not rolling up a sleeve.
Good for you. Good for you. Milton, I appreciate your call. We need to move on here. We've got a clip that Keith wants to play, and then I'll open the lines back up. After the clip, call back 1-800-313-9443. Got plenty of time to take more calls, but we're going to play a video now. Go ahead.
I want to preface this clip first.
Sure, go ahead.
During the 1960s and 70s, which was really good times in America, we had strong unions that guaranteed 40 hours a week. They gave you health care, overtime, vacation pay, pregnancy leave, sick leave. And this was all phased out, as well as so was the education in this country here, too. Anyone with a browser can search and see what the education in America is anymore, and this is probably under that communist core that I always call it, So this goes back to say exactly what happened to America, and you have to remember, you can also go there and see what the CEO's wages were back then to now, and to why these CEOs today can fire thousands of American employees, move their jobs overseas, and then they get millions of dollars in bonuses. So with that, you want to go ahead and play that clip there?
The first is by former Secretary of Labor Ray Marshall from the TV program Arkansas Works.
I'd worry a lot about industry that just came in to get your tax break. All the evidence shows that what you're going to get, if that's your main and only attraction to somebody, you're going to get somebody on the way to the third world anyway. If that's what it takes. The evidence suggests that taxes are not very important in economic development and industrial activity. And it makes sense. The most important cost to any company is labor, wage cost. Others are interest rates, the cost of the capital. Taxes are likely to be a relatively small part of the total cost. Transportation is an important cost. But if you look at tax costs as a part of the cost of doing business, it's really not that significant. And labor cost doesn't mean wages, I might add. You see, people confuse those. Some of our highest paid workers have the lowest labor cost because they're the most productive workers. And the labor cost that you're talking about is labor cost per unit of output. If you've got productive people, as we still do in the country, in spite of losing our relative position in productivity. There's other countries are closing the gap in a hurry. American workers are still the most productive workers in the world. And what we have to worry about is the fact that we are losing that. Because by the end of this decade, the Europeans will be ahead of us. By the end of this century, the Japanese will be ahead of us. And the reason that's so important is because then you will compete according to wages. And you lose
lowest common denominator.
You lose your productive, so you lose your technology and your productivity. And then your only way to compete is wages. And if you compete with wages, we'll lose. That's one of the reasons, of course, that real wages in the United States are lower in 1985 than they were in 1965.
Because of our productivity.
Because of declining productivity growth. Now, the evidence suggests to me that the way you get that up, the most important way you can get that up is concentrating on education and training of your workers.
Okay, so today they don't really have those training of workers. That's why you see with all these millions of unemployed, which are usually coming from small business, they're mainly burger flippers. And those people that have college education and have paid countless tens of thousands of dollars for a diploma and stuff can't find a job. So with that, the reason I wanted to bring this video up is because of wages inequality is what causes the problems with these riots and stuff today, where people have been put out on the sidewalk for so long, and these corporations have made billions of dollars.
Right.
And they're the ones getting bailed out, and the people now are losing their homes to foreclosure. They're getting stays on their credit card payments and stuff, and all it is massive debt, and there's no way out. And of course, what does the Fed do? It bails out the corporations and the banks that have financed this thing for years. We've had the CIA, which has brought all the drugs into this country. I mean, surely they can control the borders, can't they? Right. Anyway, this has been this same thing here. Because as I was telling Steve earlier, a person that is high on drugs only cares about their next fix.
That's right.
And that's the way to make money nowadays is through drugs. And of course, it means prison time. And of course, a prisoner cannot go on strike. He doesn't form a union. And that's why they can bring these jobs back from China this time. Because 22 cents a day, that's better than paying some Chinese person, isn't it? And of course, Trump's in on this, sadly, because it's Make America Great Again. He wants all those corporations back here, back from Mexico, all this stuff. And then there's the robots that are taking the job. So where do the people ever have any venue? So.
Okay. You know, that can't possibly happen. We'll go back to the same scenario. And you and I have talked about this, and I think, Dave, we've talked about this, that Donald Trump is demonizing China. They stole our technology. They stole our manufacturing. They didn't steal anything. Actually, it was handed over. Yes, all legal like. The politicians wrote the legislation, made the laws, made the loopholes, allowing greedy corporations to go abroad and get cheap labor. They had to dodge. They got to dodge the EPA standards. They get to dodge the unions. No more union negotiations. No labor costs. Labor costs go down. Get cheap labor, foreign labor. So I get really irritated when I hear Donald Trump saying they stole our manufacturing. They did not steal. It was actually handed over, given, and willfully. So that's a false presentation right there. Now, Keith, you sent me something over. It was interesting here, and I agree. It's probably going to be about an accurate percentage here, but the economy is tanking. 47% of businesses are closing and jobs are not coming back. I do believe that. In the retail, as far as the food industry, that's going to get hit really hard. Your major guys may stay in business, but they're going to knock out a whole slew of fast food, small businessmen in fast food. That's going to be very serious, some serious economic times coming. But we talked about that clip you played from Greg Manarino, Keith, and which is in agreement with what Gerald Celente is saying and Dave from the X22 report saying. We got a tsunami wave of debt. There's going to be a bust that you are going to see here, a bubble burst that is like no bubble burst ever in economics. We are going to see a major, major crash here. They just can't keep going on with all this quantitative easing and plunge protection. The bubble is going to bust. We haven't even talked too much about the universal basic income. I know that's probably on the agenda too for the globalists. So if that happens, there's no talk of ever bringing back. There'd be no purpose to bring back a labor union because it's universal basic income.
And you also have those working from home too. But the point is, though, is the real estate bubble. Now, Peter Schiff has talked about this. He has a video up about 3 days ago where he had forecasted all this is going to go on there. But imagine, though, the amount of housing when all these people, even if they got a stimulus check of $1,200 a month in what they call a UBI, that will not cut paying their rent or mortgage, paying their power bills, their insurances and stuff. I mean, it's disaster coming. This is a distraction.
Yeah. Even with that new stimulus check that may be coming out, actually, it's gone through the House, hasn't gone through the Senate yet to be ratified. But you're looking at close to $6,000 per family, and that would cover $1,200 per adult, and now upping it from $500 to $1,000 per dependent. It used to be a child, but you can claim 3 dependents in your house and get an extra $3,000. But they're looking around close to $6,000 in a stimulus check here. I'm not sure if the Democrats or the Republicans are going to okay that. This is madness.
Well, that comes with,
printing
that comes with strings, remember? Because again, the corporations are protected. How? Well, Mitch McConnell and those guys, they want this protection there for these employers that should an employee get sick, that they can't sue the employee or the employer, you know? So, I mean, it's always the corporations that are always protected. Forget the people. Oh, and then, as we've talked about, Nancy Pelosi's in her Cobra. She wants you, or the 50 some odd million now unemployed, to pay into this insurance stuff. So in case you get sick, and of course, with 50 million people that are employed on top of the, 30 some million that didn't have health insurance,
right,
how are they going to pay for anything?
I don't know.
I don't think they bothered to figure any of that out. And when all this collapses because of the debt, and it will, they'll blame it on this pandemic. They'll blame it on the riots. They'll blame it on everything. Well, yeah, they'll blame it on China. They'll blame it on everything but the fraud that it's been. Man, this is going to be a mess. It's unavoidable. It's only a matter of when, not if.
You know, I broke a story. I broke a story last week, or I think I broke it on John's show, talking about the shoe will drop. And we're talking about just in California. Now, California got hit pretty hard in the mortgage crisis. Now, Florida was probably the first state actually to have the big bubble burst on the housing market. And it's probably going to, it probably is going to happen here also. But we know in California it's going to happen because they've shut down pretty much everything. So July and August, look for a huge collapse in the housing market in California. People, if you live in California, look to get the heck out. Sell now. Sell. And we are back. This is What Really Happened. We're going to go back to our good friend here, Dave. Let him get a fast comment in here. And we're going to squeeze one last caller in from New Mexico, Steve in New Mexico. So hold on.
Right on. Okay. I just want to say we need to follow the money, because trillions upon trillions of dollars have just magically evaporated from all these markets and all these nations all around the world. Where did the money go? We need to follow the money, because when you find out where all that money goes, you're going to find all the perpetrators that have been doing the pandemics and staging the riots and doing the silent coup takeover of all the countries in the world, this new weird odor nonsense. And that's all I got to say about that. So go get the call.
No, I agree. I agree with you 100%. We'll take our last caller here. Steve in New Mexico, you're our last caller.
Hey, Steve and Keith. Yeah, Keith, I was wondering, since there's a shortage of silver and all that, is it because the U.S. mints are closed right now, or what's going on with that?
I don't know, because I've asked Jeff, because I had a couple extra dollars. I wanted to buy some silver, and Jeff still hasn't got back to me on it, although he said he's working on it. But I did hear that there's been a couple big, huge buyers that have been buying up silver like mad. And I think that's probably in a precursor to the U.S. dollar collapse.
Okay.
Could be.
Well, I appreciate, all your advice and everything on your show. And I just wanted to say, even with Steve, you're right. This whole thing was fixed. They didn't go by the protocols. I even watched the video myself. Yeah. And, well, right now, I guess COVID's at halftime now. Now we got to put up with this.
So you recognized in that video that they did not put oxygen on this guy right off the bat. That bothered you, didn't it? Isn't that bothersome?
Yeah, because my neighbor up the street, he went through what you went through as far as being paramedic, and he noticed the same daggum thing, and we talked about it.
Good. Please share that information with other people. Share it.
Oh, I already have. I've shared it with at least 20, 30 people already and stuff. And I appreciate your show and Don and Rogers and all that. You guys are doing a good job. Just keep it up and everything.
Will do. Hey, thank you for your call, Steve. I appreciate you calling in. Comments on either side here. We've got a few minutes to go. Keith, you want to make one last comment?
Yeah, I noticed this here, and someone else just made a meme out of this. It says, how did all those riders in all those different cities get the same black T-shirts and face masks that say, I can't breathe? This is just like when you see all of these Remember, we're in a color revolution here in the United States. It's the same played out CIA type stuff there, where suddenly these billboards come out. Everyone's got these made up signs and stuff. If you can't believe that you're in a psyop, you are really,
Big money was behind all of that again, over and over, and it's not organic. And look at the protests when you see all the very carefully printed signs that are all precise. There's no homemade stuff. If this was real and organic and impromptu, they wouldn't have had enough time to put all this stuff together. They had lead time. They knew this was going to happen before the event even happened. Again,
excellent.
I'm getting kind of tired of that.
Excellent point. Really good observation. You're right. That was very much planned. If they had the t-shirts already printed up, very much so. Good call on that one, Dave and Keith. Appreciate that. Well, I've got really nothing else to say. I think we've covered quite a bit tonight. Please share what you know, what you've learned here on this show. Support the network. Stay tuned for Mr. John Stadmiller. I think he's going to be in the chair tonight for his show, the National Intel Report. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, and Mr. Keith Rogers will be in the hot seat. I'll be riding shotgun with Dave. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Stay safe, stay angry, and don't fall for this divide.